Hi, this is Tidra, and today I'm going to do a card making demonstration. I'm going to demonstrate how to make this card that my Close to My Heart consultant Sue Schmid included in my March kit. So I'm going to show you how to make this card, and then I'm going to show you how to use this card as an inspiration to do another card. My son's fiancée Nikita has a birthday coming up next month, so I'm going to take this card as inspiration, change it up just a little bit, and turn it into a birthday card for her. So first thing we're going to do is show you the different kind of tools that you would need in order to make this card. All of the products I'm using today are things that I can get through Close to My Heart, except I'm not entirely sure you can get the glue dots from there. These are glue dots. These are what we're going to use to adhere the buttons that are on the card. Okay, so I'm not sure you can get those through, or at least not this brand, through Close to My Heart. But I do think that they do sell some glue dots. So you'll need glue dots in order to adhere your buttons. Now I didn't raise the heart on this card, but if you're not going to mail, if you're going to mail it, I wouldn't raise the heart, because you've already got buttons, so you've kind of got some dimension, and if you make it too much higher, then it'll have trouble going through the postal machines. But if you're not going to mail it, if you're going to hand deliver the card, if you want, you can raise this by using foam tape. And I'll show you how to do that. I'll go ahead and, since I'm not going to mail the card to Nikita, I'll show you how to raise that on that card. So you'll need that. You need some form of adhesive runner. This is what I use. I use the Tomboy brand. And you can get that through Close to My Heart. You can order it through them. What I do is I get it through Michael's. You can get refills. This is a really nice runner, because a lot of them you have to, when they run out, you have to open it up and thread the new thing on it and all that sort of thing. But with Tomboy, it just comes apart like that, so that when you run out, you can just buy a replacement. And Michael sells them in sets of 3, so you can buy a box of 3 of these replacement cartridges, and when one runs out, all you do is take this and literally snap it into place. So that's really nice. So you'll need a runner. You'll need some blocks for your stamps, some different size blocks. I've got several of those here. A little foam dauber or a piece of sponge to put ink on the edges of your papers. Then you'll need your ink, which we're going to be using Outdoor Denim. I don't know if you can see that real well, but it's Outdoor Denim ink, because it corresponds with the papers really well that we're using. Some buttons, which you can get this collection of blue buttons from Close to My Heart. It's got all kinds of different buttons in it, different colors and sizes. Then also, what we used on the card were clear, what I call bling, because Mark calls them sparkles, which are just kind of shiny, crystal-like things that you can adhere to the card. But you don't have to use white or clear. You could, if you prefer, use these opaques, which look like little pearls, which are nice. Or you can get their sparkles in different colors. They have different colors. This is the blue and green assortment. So since we're using blue on the card, if you wanted, instead of the clear ones, you could use some of the blue ones. Then you'll need a cleaner and a cleaning pad to clean off your stamps after you've used them. This particular card uses the Love Clusters stamp set. And you can see the heart stamp there that we're going to use, and the You and Me stamp that we're going to use. Okay. Then another thing that the card requires is this heart that we cut out. If you're close to my heart customer and you have a Cricut machine, a Cricut cutting machine, Close to My Heart has a Cricut cartridge set called Art Philosophy, and you can use that to make the heart shape. The stamp set tells you what size to do it. I believe it's a 3-inch. Yes, it's a 3-inch heart. It's got real tiny down there on the stamp set. Tells you what size to use on the Cricut cartridge. If you don't have a Cricut though, what I did, since I know a lot of people don't have a Cricut or they're not Close to My Heart customers, and any of these products, I'm using Close to My Heart just because that's the brand I like, but you don't have to use Close to My Heart products. Michael's has, or any craft store that has a scrapbooking section, has lots of different companies that have the same type of things available that you can use if you've got something else that you prefer or you just want to try something. So what I did was, since a lot of people don't have a Cricut or don't have that particular thing, what I did in order to get the heart the right size, because you need it to be the right size in order for the stamp to fit on it, what I did was I kind of cheated. I took the stamp package out, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's an outline, just a real thin line. If you take the stamp off of here, you can see it a little bit better maybe. An outline of the heart. See the little line? That's the outline of the heart. And what I did was I took this and I held it up to a piece of notebook paper and then held it up to the light so that I could see the outline, and I just drew the outline of the heart and cut it out in notebook paper so that then I would have a template for tracing it onto some cardstock. I did that, so I got the template that way. So I cut that out with nice sharp fine point scissors so that I could get a nice cut. And I cut that out, and then what I did was I used that and traced it onto cardstock, and then cut out the cardstock so that I would have my heart. This is in colonial white, which is not a real bright white. It's more of a creamy white, which I like to use that for my cardstock. The bright white sometimes is a little, I don't want to say harsh, but kind of harsh. So I did that to get my heart shape. Okay, so you don't actually have to have a Cricut or anything like that fancy to get the heart. You can use, I just kind of rigged it using the stamp outline and a light source so that I could see it through the notebook paper to get a template. Okay, so you got your heart. Then the next thing we're going to use a 12 by 12 piece of colonial white cardstock to make the base of the card, to make the actual card itself, the part that goes like that. And when I cut that, I'm going to show you, we're going to actually cut 2 cards out of that so that I have the one, I'm going to use that same base for the birthday card for Nikita. Okay, so you need that. And then for this card here, what we're using is a piece of the Pemberley paper pack. And this is what one side of it looks like, but this is not the side we're going to use for the card. Mostly, although I like this side better, it's a darker background, and so it wouldn't be as easy to see the You and Me stamp. So we're going to use the back side. We're going to use this side for the card. Okay. And then the last thing you'll need is a paper cutter. Okay. You can get these at any craft store, or if you use Close to My Heart, they sell them through their idea book as well. Okay, and what this does is it has a blade. I don't know if you can see this real well. This goes up and down. This is kind of a paper guide. It has a blade that runs in this track so that you get a nice straight edge. And then it has an arm that folds out so that if you need to measure something longer, you can. So like when you have your 12 by 12 piece of paper, you can cut that on here with good measurements without any trouble. So So that's a paper cutter, and lots of different brands of paper cutters. I happen to like this one. It's by Fiskars, and I actually think Fiskars may be the brand that Close to My Heart sells, but I'm not positive. So you might want to look in their idea book to see. But this is the one that I like. It's got nice clear lines for all your measurements, and it's also got little measurements for like 3x5, a 4x6, 5x7, so that if you have a specific size in mind, you can just use those as guidelines for your cutting. Okay, so those are the things we're going to use to make the card. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the camera so that it faces down on the paper, on my surface, so you can watch what I'm doing while I explain it. So give me just a second to change the camera angle. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to cut the card bases out of the Colonial White cardstock. Okay, so we're going to open up the side of this, and what we're going to do is a normal card, or kind of the normal size of a card, standard size, is a 5.5 by 4.25 card. Okay, so what we're going to do is our first cut that we're going to make is going to be 8.5 inches. That's going to be so that when we fold the 8.5 in half, it becomes the 4.25. Okay, so we're going to make that cut first. So what you do is you lift up your paper guide, and then you just kind of slide it over till you measure 8.5. So there's 8.5. Okay, and then you just slide your blade right up. You see, it makes a nice straight cut. Okay, so this is just going to be kind of scrap paper, which we're going to need a little bit of scrap paper a little bit later, so that'll work out nice. Okay, so now we have what's going to be the measurements for the 4.25, because we're going to fold that in half. So now we need the 5.5 part to the card. So we're going to do the same thing, and we're going to find our 5.5. And we're actually going to do that twice, once for each card. So there's 5.5. And then we're going to do 5.5 again. So if you have a 12 by 12, which is kind of the standard size of a scrapbook paper, you can actually get 2 card bases out of a 12 by 12 piece of paper with 2 little pieces of leftover. So this is leftover as well. Okay. So in order to make that the card base, you're going to fold it in half. Now a nice way to do that is if you have one of these, which I didn't show you this before. This is just kind of a little, I don't even know what you call this tool, but it's got this kind of pointed edge that's a little bit thicker, and then it's got this thin edge, which I use this when I adhere bling or sparkles. I use that to pick it up off the paper, because sometimes they're really small and it's hard to get with your fingers. And then this side I use this track here with this blade to emboss an edge for the fold in my card. So I put this at the 4.25 line, and then I take this and I just gently, because you don't want to pierce through the paper, run it down that valley. And then it gives you, I don't think you can see it, but it gives you a little edge or a little mark there so that you can fold the card easily. So there you have a card base. Okay, so that just makes the edge a little bit crisper than if you just fold it in half. Okay, so there's one, and we'll go ahead and fold the other one that we're going to use for the other card. Well, we've got it here like this. And we do the exact same thing, just run that down the track, and that gives us a nice fold. Makes folding the card really, really easy. Okay, so we'll put that one aside for the other card. Okay. Then what's nice about this card is that it only actually uses one cut of the actual patterned paper that you're going to use. So you don't have to do a whole lot with it. Now the cut we're going to do is we're going to cut the paper to match the cover of a card. So we're going to cut it 5.5 by 4 1/4. Okay. So I'm going to start by doing 4 1/4 because that's the smaller cut, and there's enough paper to do the 5.5 the other way, so that I leave a bigger piece of leftover for another project. Okay. So I put it on my 4 1/4 line, run my thing, and I can pull away my excess. And now I still have this big piece of paper, quite a bit left, that I can use for another project. Okay, and then we're going to turn it and do our 5.5. So we go 5.5. And then we still have some more left over. So we have lots of paper left over from that one sheet of 12 by 12 patterned paper to do lots of other things with, make lots of other cards. Okay, so that's all the cutting you actually do for this card. So you can put away your cutter, set it aside. Okay, then the first thing we're going to do is, if you'll notice, this doesn't actually cover, the pattern paper doesn't actually cover the whole card. But what you do is you cut it the size of the card so that you have plenty of room to do your tear. We actually tore this edge. Okay, now you can buy tools to help you get a nice torn edge, but I don't use one of those because really the paper tears nicely. You don't really need to spend the money to buy the tool. You can tear it just as easily by yourself. So what you want to make sure you do, since this card is laid out this way, this paper would go this way on top of it. You want to make sure that you tear this way and not this way. Okay, so you're going to tear along the long edge of the card. Okay, so we're just going to literally tear along the edge. And see, because this is close to my heart paper, and a lot of other papers have this too, it has a nice white core to it, so you see how you're getting a nice white edge there. And the tear does not have to be anything fancy. You just kind of tear along the edge however you like the way it looks. Okay, so we're just getting a nice white edge there. And then this is just scrap. So you can either, if you've torn a wide enough piece that you think you might want to use it for a border on a card somewhere, you can save that. If not, you can just set that aside to throw away. Okay, so see, now we have this piece with the torn edge that's going to go like that. Okay, and we have our heart that I traced and cut out earlier. Okay, so these are the two pieces of paper that are involved in creating this card. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ink the edges. See how the edge is not white anymore, it's a darker color? That's because we're taking the ink, which, to open the ink up, it's got these little ridges here. You can just push up on those, open it up, turn it around, and set it down in there. Okay? And then we take our little sponge dauber, or if you have just a piece of sponge, that works as well. And we're going to just ink the edges. See how the edges of the heart is inked as well? Okay, so we're just going to take the sponge dauber, pat it on the ink pad. See how it gets ink on there? And then we're just going to basically touch the edges of the card. And we do that the whole way around. And it'll just help that heart stand out a little bit from the background, since the background is actually the same color as the heart. See, so we just touch the edges, and I don't know how well you can see that. Not very. But it just gave a blue edge to the heart. Now we're going to do the same thing with the paper. Okay, and this is why that edge appears blue instead of white. We're just going to ink along the edges. And then it's not inking enough, just tap the ink pad again. Now you don't have to do that. You can leave the white edge if you prefer the white edge. And you don't have to do the other edges either. That's purely a matter of taste. I like it because it, sometimes I find that just cut edges seem kind of stark, seem a little bit unfinished to me. So a lot of times I'll ink the edges with a complementary ink color to whatever the color of the paper is, just because it looks a little bit more finished, a little bit less stark. Okay, so basically what we've done is we've given this a dark edge around the paper. Let's see if you can see that. Okay, and see we've got lots of ink on there now. And later you just wash that with just some soapy water. It'll leave a little bit of a stain on the sponge, but that's okay. It'll dry and it won't transfer to other ink colors or anything. So it's all right to use when you finish washing it for there to be a stain left. That doesn't hurt anything. Okay. Okay, now we're going to adhere this to our card base. Move this over. Okay, we just take this, and this has got a little guard on it. So you open the little guard. Just kind of run this along the edge, and that just puts a little bit of sticky stuff on the paper. You can put as little or as much of this on as you want to put enough that it sticks. My mom uses a lot more than I do. It doesn't really matter as long as it's enough to stick. And if you're more comfortable with more, then just put more. And we're just lining that up with the bottom edge of the card. I'm pushing that down. Okay? Then the heart. I'm not actually going to put the heart down yet because I want to stamp my image on it first. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to stamp the you and me that goes down here in the corner. See the little you and me over here? We're going to stamp that down here. Okay. Now, that's part of the same stamp set. Again, that's the Love Cluster stamp set. Now, when you get a stamp set, it comes with this foam backing to kind of protect the stamps. And you also use this foam backing when you're using the stamps. If you don't use the foam backing, a lot of times you'll get an uneven stamp. You'll have places where it didn't stamp through clearly. So you want to go ahead and use that foam backing to get a nice even surface. So we're going to stick that inside the card so that when I hold the card down on top of it, that foam backing is beneath the place where I'm going to stamp the image. Okay, and when possible, try to use a block that's an appropriate size for the stamp you're using. So we're just going to peel this stamp right off here, and then we're going to use this block because that's a good size for that stamp. Now, because this is words and you want them to kind of line up well, and acrylic stamps are flexible, there is on Close to My Heart blocks a little ridge. There's a little ridge along here that's a straight line that you can use as a guide when you're doing lettering and that sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and just adhere this to the block, and all you do to adhere it to the block is just push it down, and now it's good to go. Okay, and that's how you do any of the stamps on the acrylic blocks, is you just push them down there and it sticks. And if it doesn't line up exactly the way you want it to, you can just, peel it back up and put it back down again until it's the way you want it. And because these are flexible, if you had wanted to curve this, you could actually curve it just by kind of pulling it so that it laid on the stamp on the block differently. You can do that however you want. So you can make these stamps really flexible in not only that they are flexible, but flexible in how you use them. Okay, then we're going to ink it up, and because it's clear and we can see through it, we'll be able to see whether or not it's fully inked or not. Okay, so I'm going to ink it a little bit more, and all I'm doing is tapping it on there. Okay, and then making sure I've got good coverage, that every part of the letters are covered with ink. And then I'm just going to press it down onto my card evenly, even pressure, and pull it back up. And you've got you and me. Okay, to clean this stamp, all you do is you take your cleaner like this, open it up, it's a little spray bottle, and you take your scrubber. You just put a little bit of this onto your scrubber. I'm going to do it off to the side so I don't get it on the card. Okay, so what I did was I just sprayed some of that on one side. You only spray it on one side, not both sides. Then you take your stamp, rub it on the side that you sprayed the cleaner, and see how the ink is gone now, and then you dry it by rubbing it on the other side. So that's how you dry your stamp. The stamp's clean, ready to go back on its pad. Okay, so you just put it right back on your paper. It adheres just like it did before, and that's all there is to that stamp. Okay, so now this card is actually done except for the heart. Okay, so that's all there is to that card except for the neat heart embellishment. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside so we can work on the heart. Okay, for the heart, now this block is too small, obviously, for this stamp. This is the heart stamp that we're going to use. Okay, so we need a bigger block for that. Okay, so to complete the heart embellishment to go on the card, we have our heart. We're going to use the heart stamp on large block. And what we're going to do is we're going to do what they call a second generation stamp, because I'm gonna stamp some of the smaller images from the stamp set on top of the big image. So I want the bigger image to be slightly lighter so that the second stamp will be more prominent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a second generation stamp. Now the way you do that is that you ink up your stamp just like you would normally, and then you take a piece of scrap paper and stamp the image on the scrap paper. And then before inking again, you stamp onto where you want your second generation image to be. Okay, and if you were to stamp it again without inking it, it'd be a third generation, each generation being slightly lighter than the original. Okay, so we're going to do a second generation. So we're not going to stamp on here first. We're going to stamp on our scrap paper. And I'm just using this scrap paper from when we cut the card bases earlier. So I'm going to ink up my stamp. Now when it's a larger image like this, sometimes it's hard to get the ink coverage all the way through, and so I'll start by just kind of swiping my stamp to get a good base, but then I don't want the streaks that swiping causes, so then I just tap, tap, tap to make sure I've got a good coverage on my stamp. Okay, and then we're going to stamp the first time, like I said, on the scrap paper. And that's the first generation stamp right there. Okay. Now without going back to the ink pad. Actually, what I'm going to do, I don't know if you noticed that. You see how I've got some blank spaces here? So I didn't push evenly. I didn't use an even pressure, and that's why I have these white spaces. See how there are spots on the stamp that have darker? Okay, well I don't want that on my final image. So I'm going to go ahead and redo my first generation so that my second generation is more even. So I'm just going to ink it back up again. See, no harm, no foul. And then stamp on the scrap. And I'm going to make sure I get more of an even pressure this time. See, that one was much better. Okay. So now, without inking it again, I'm going to stamp onto my heart image. And because my acrylic is clear, I can see so that I get it all on the image. And pull it up. And there's my basic heart. Now I'm going to clean my stamp. And the way to do that is, I've shown you already. I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more on there because I didn't put a lot before. And then we're going to just swipe that on the cleaning pad, dry it off, and then we can put that stamp up. Okay, that's all we need the big block for. So I'm going to put the big block aside. And now we're going to use a couple little blocks, because what we're going to do is we're going to take this stamped image and we're going to take a couple of the other images on the stamp set that are the same shape and size as these images, and we're going to stamp those first generation. So we're just going to ink it up, make sure it's got a good nice coverage on there, and we're still on our foam, and we're going to look through our clear stamp so we can line it up well, and then stamp it down. Now see how, if I had not done it second generation, you might not have been able to notice that as much. So that's why we did that first stamp second generation, is because I wanted it to be really obvious where I had put these other stamps. I'm going to put a little circle with a heart, I think up in this corner, kind of like that one. Okay. And then this has got another heart. Looks a little bit different. It's a little bit different. Let's make sure I get it right side up. And we're just going to stamp right there to get our other heart. And I'm just cleaning each of these as I go. And we're just going to do one more. This is just going to be a little circle we're just going to put right in there. There we go. Okay. Whoops. Now I'm going to go ahead and close up my ink pad because that's all the stamping we're going to do. So I can put that away and move my block out of the way. Close up my cleaning pad, and I can actually put my stamp set up. Okay, so I put it back on the foam backing, which protects it, and back into its case. And each of the stamp sets comes in one of those nice little cases to keep them nice and clean. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some buttons from that button pat we looked at before, and I'm going to, I've already picked out the ones I like. See, the buttons shapes kind of coincide with the shapes of the stamp, and I actually am going to put two buttons there because I kind of like the effect of that button within a button. And let's see, we'll put one there, and I think here I'll put one there. And see, what's nice about this is you see how the stamp, I didn't get quite a good coverage there. That's okay, because I'm covering it up with a button. No one will ever know. And I think I like this dark one up here. Maybe down here. No, I think up here. Yeah, I think I like that. Okay, and we're going to attach those with some of those dots I showed you earlier, which were glue dots. Okay, and this is how they come. They come in the little bag. They come all these little squares. Okay, each of these little squares is two pieces of clear film with a glue dot in the middle. You see the little glue dot there in the center? Okay, and the glue dot is exactly what it sounds like. It's a dot of glue. Okay, now they come in different sizes. I'm using medium. They do sell smaller ones, which really would have been better for these tinier buttons, but I don't actually have any of those on hand. So I'm just going to make do with what I've got. All you need to do is, if your glue dot's a little bit bigger, is just kind of roll it up underneath around the edges and it'll work just fine. But I am going to look and kind of find the smallest one for my smallest button. The sizes vary just a little bit, not a whole lot. I think this one's probably the smallest, so we're going to use that on the tiny button in the middle. And all you do is I peel off one piece of the clear, which I know you can't really see that clear. There, peel that off. Take my button, push it onto the glue dot, okay, and then peel the other piece of clear off. Okay, and like this is the one that's a little bit bigger, so all I'm doing is I'm just kind of folding over the glue dot so it's not sticking out on the edges. And then I take my button and I just press it down where I want it to go. And the glue dot holds it in place. So we're going to do that same thing with all of these. Really easy to do. Just peel it off. Put the button on it, peel the other half off, and place it where you want it. So these work out really easily. Oops, stuck to my fingernail. Okay. And then these shaped ones, I just kind of make sure I get my shape to match the stamped image underneath. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Here's 4. 4. Put this little one inside the big one. I'm going to use the glue dots for that too. It's another one that's smaller, so we're just going to kind of roll the edges up so they're underneath. And then we're just going to put it in the center. Center there. And then we'll use one more for the back of it. And again, we're just going to line it up with the stamp image. And there we go. So now we have our buttons attached. Okay, now we're going to do one more thing, which on the original card I used clear sparkles for inside here, but I think on this card I'm going to use the colored ones. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of each color, the darker, the medium, and the light blue that comes in this set. And I'm just going to use this tool that I used to make my crease in my card originally. I'm just going to use this other end to help me pry it up off the backing, because the stickum is already on these, right? So I'll use that to help me lay them down. And I think I'm going to put one out here. And I'm going to put this middle one right in here. And let's see, the light one. Let's see, I like a sense of symmetry. Let's put it up here. Yeah, I kind of like that. Okay, and you can put them wherever you want. You don't have to limit yourself to 3. You can put it as many or as few as you'd like. That goes for the stamps within, the buttons, and the bling. You can do it any kind of pattern that you'd like to do it. Okay, the next step is just attaching this to the card. And we just do that with the adhesive that we used before. So what you end up with is this. And then the only thing left after that, okay, so you just adhere that to the card with the adhesive. The only other thing is I put 3 little clear blings here on the side. And they work the same as the others. You just take them off the sheet and lay them on the side. Okay, so that is that card. And this was the original that we were doing another one of. You see, the only things that we did different is we used a little bit of colored bling in this one. And we did a little bit different with the buttons. And a little bit different with where we put our stamped images. Okay, and then you can put whatever you'd like inside the card. Okay. So that's how you make that card. That's a you and me card. It's good for, I'd probably use it for like an anniversary card for your boyfriend or your husband, or if you did it in pinks, maybe you could use it for Valentine's Day, that sort of thing. But it's a nice little card. It's got a lot of different little details to it that make it kind of special. And then the birthday card for Nikita, basically I did the exact same card, except I used some pink papers because pink is her favorite color. And I used the butterfly image from the stamp set instead of the heart image. So, and then instead of doing it flat to the surface, I popped it up with some tape. So this is what we ended up with for the birthday card. And I made this the exact same way. I just made the card vertical instead of horizontal. Then I took this paper from the Lucy paper pack, and I did the same thing I did with this, which is I cut a 5.5 by 4.25 piece of paper. But this time I tore along the short edge instead of the long edge. And then I used blush ink all along the edges of it, because blush is a color that goes with that paper pack. And each paper pack has a little instruction kind of paper in it, or along the top of the pages, that shows you what colors ink complement the paper pack. So you don't really have to try and guess which colors will go. It will tell you which colors to use. So I inked the edges with the blush. I stamped my butterfly image with the blush. And then I used the pink button set to pick some buttons. And then I used the red, pink, and purple sparkle set to do some of the bling. And then I used the clear. I did 3 small ones here, and then 3 of the size that I used on this card down here. And then instead of putting you and me down in the corner, I put the happy birthday in the corner. So it's the exact same card. It's just done with a different color pack, a different stamp, a different color ink. But you can see that they're very different cards, but they both work really well. And then one thing I did with this card, I didn't put anything in the middle, but this card, because I know exactly what I'm using it for, I went ahead and I took one of their other embellishments, which were these little wooden butterflies in their garden wooden set of embellishments. And I put them on here and I attached them with the glue dots, just like I had done the buttons. And then put 2 of the teeny sparkles to match the sparkles that I had put here. Okay, so like I used a light and then a dark on the body of the butterfly here, and I did the exact same thing here. I used a light and a dark, and a light and a dark. And then I'll just put my birthday message to her in here. Okay, so that is the exact same card with just a few different changes, just some minor changes that give you 2 really pretty cards that you can send to loved ones. So that's all for this demonstration. Have a great day, and don't forget to breathe. Bye.